Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel. Bex here today to do the book Postscript Tag. This tag was originally created by Memento Mori back in 2018, but I was tagged at the end of 2021 by Jill over at The Book Bully, who is awesome, by the way. You should absolutely subscribe to her if you have not. I will link her channel down below. And at the time, I knew I wasn't going to be able to get the video filmed and edited and uploaded in time for it to kind of fall within the normal time frame of when you would expect this type of tag to come out. So I decided to save it for this year. So I'm doing it, Jill. It's just 1 year late. This is a collection of questions that is sort of supposed to go with the mid-year book freakout tag, but this is looking at your books for the entire year. I'm filming this on December 17th, so it's not quite the end of the year yet, but based on the questions, I don't think any of the books that I'm currently wrapping up at this point would really fill any of these possible answers. So let's get started with question number 1. This asks the longest book that you read this year and the book that took you the longest to finish. Based on what I can see on Goodreads and the editions that I read for different books, my longest read of 2022 was Facing the Mountain, a true story of Japanese-American heroes in World War II by Daniel James Brown. I read this for the BookTube prize, and I ended up getting it from the library, and I did not realize how large it was until I picked up the physical book. It's 560 pages. There is some, extra notes and whatnot in the back, but it is quite a long book to read, and this looks at Japanese Americans and the part that they played in World War II, not only the soldiers, but also their families who are back in the US. I really enjoyed the book, so I felt that the length was worth it. In terms of the book that took me the longest to finish, I actually have the physical copy of that, and that is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I started rereading this book in October of 2021, and I didn't finish it until May of 2022. I actually have the exact dates. October 13th, 2021 to May 12th, 2022. That's how long it took me to read this book. It was a reread, but it had been years and years. And when I picked it up in that October start date, I was excited for it. I flew through a bunch of it, and then I just stopped and had a really hard time moving on. And then I was doing like the BookTube prize readings and stuff, and so it just kept getting pushed aside. Maybe I read a chapter here or there. So yeah, that took me a really long time to get through, 7 months, I guess, to read this book. So definitely the longest to finish. Number 2 is a book you read this year that was outside of your comfort zone. That is A Swim in a Pond in the Rain, in which 4 Russians give a masterclass on writing, reading, and life by George Saunders. This is another one that I had to read for the BookTube prize, and I absolutely would not have picked it up had I not been forced to read it for this. If I had even decided to pick it up, I don't know, it would have, compelled me to do that. But if I had picked it up, I would have DNF'd it, because it's a book that talks about writing and really deeply analyzes these short stories by different Russian writers. It's really a book for people who are interested in the craft that is writing, and maybe they want to better their own writing abilities, or they just really love analyzing texts. This is basically a book version of a class that George Saunders teaches in his MFA program at Syracuse University. So it was not really something that was geared towards what I'm interested in at this point. And so I got really tired of the analyzing, and just, it was okay at the beginning, but it got really tiresome by the end. So that was definitely outside of my comfort zone, because I never would have picked it up in the first place. And unfortunately, it was not a book that paid off in the end. It was not one that I read outside of my comfort zone and realized that I liked it. Question 3 is, how many books did you reread? And I'm actually really excited about this question because I reread 6 books this year. I am not somebody who generally rereads, and so this is a really high number for me. The first one is one I've already mentioned, Jane Eyre. So even though I started it in 2021, I finished it this year, so I'm counting it as part of that. I also reread books 2 and 3 in the His Dark Materials series, so that's The Subtle Knife and The Amber Spyglass. I also reread 2 books in the Royal Diaries series. So we have Cleopatra the Seventh, Daughter of the Nile, and then Mary, Queen of Scots, Queen Without a Country. And then the final book that I reread this year is the second book published in the Chronicles of Narnia series, not in actual timeline order, but publishing order, Prince Caspian. You may notice a theme with these books in that most of them, besides Jane Eyre, are books I read a long time ago. So when I was, like the Chronicles of Narnia, I originally read when I was 9. I read the His Dark Materials series when I was 10. Those Royal Diaries series probably around the same age. So it's books that I haven't gone back to in many, many years. So I barely remembered any of the details in them. And so that's what compelled me to decide to reread them. So yeah, 6 books reread this year. It's pretty damn good. My favorite reread of the year was The Subtle Knife, number 2 in the His Dark Materials series. So I reread The Golden Compass the end of 2019, I believe it was, and I didn't like it as much as I thought I was going to, and so it really dampened the momentum that I was originally feeling to reread this series. I bought this this collection of books, like this series, years and years ago, and I've just been holding on to them until I felt the urge to reread them. And unfortunately, The Golden Compass didn't go very well, but then this year I was like, okay, no, we're gonna finish the series, we're gonna do it. And I ended up really enjoying The Subtle Knife. I think it was because Will is introduced as a character in this, and it's also, we see a lot of our world in it, and so I was really enjoying having that perspective, and then going into Lyra's world and just a lot of the characters that were in this, it made me really happy. And so I'm now very glad that I pushed myself to continue rereading the series, because I ended up really liking this one, and that's why it's my favorite reread. Number 5 is a book you read for the first time that you look forward to rereading in the future. I thought about this question a lot. I looked at all the books that I'd logged this year in my Goodreads reading challenge, and besides the fact that I've already reread 6 of them technically, of the remainder, I don't feel any pull to reread them. So it's hard for me to even consider what I'm going to want to reread in the future. Like I mentioned, I'm not a person that often rereads books. I need a lot of time in between reading them, at least in my adulthood. I feel like I need a lot of time in between books. So it's possible in 5 years I'll feel the urge to reread one of the books that I read, but I honestly don't have a real answer for this question. Question 6 is your favorite single short story or novella that you read this year, and that is Lyra's Oxford, which is also by Philip Pullman. It is a book that takes place 2 years after the end of the Amber Spyglass. It was really nice to be brought back into this world in a very low stakes sort of environment, because we've already had the events of the big series happen. The book is 64 pages long. It took me like an hour to read, if that. And there was even little inserts and things in the story that added to the experience of the book. I just thought it was also presented very well. Question 7 is Mass Appeal, a book you liked and would recommend to a wide variety of readers. And I chose Unfollow, A Journey from Hatred to Hope by Megan Phelps Roper. Megan was born and raised in the Westboro Baptist Church. Her grandfather was actually the man who founded the church. So you follow Megan's story in pretty good detail from when she's quite young and what the church was like then, and how it changed over time to the point where she felt that she needed to leave the church, and how hard that was for her to do, especially because her family is there and she was raised in that environment. But I also think it did an excellent job of humanizing a lot of people in the Westboro Baptist Church. If you are sort of aware of who they are, there's a lot of negativity that comes from them, and they protest a lot of things, and they would specifically travel the country to protest. Like, they had this whole, it was all organized and everything, and she gets into all those details, but you can also see her talking about the people around her and how they would help each other, and how there was goodness there as well. You see those negative side effects, but you see them from the lens of somebody who was raised there and how it made sense in her mind at the time, until eventually she you can see her path sort of being able to take a step back and realize that she didn't actually agree with where the church was going. And so I recommend this to other people because it gives you an inside look into an organization that I was always very like negative towards for good reason. Like, this isn't excusing what they do, it's just you can see more of that human side of it, and you can take a minute to also step back and reflect and say, okay, I see how we got to this point. What can we do to hopefully make it better going forward? If you've ever had any interest in learning a bit more about the Westboro Baptist Church, because it's written by somebody who grew up in that environment, I would highly recommend this. Question 8 is specialized appeal, a book you liked but would be hesitant to recommend to just anyone. Because I didn't have a good answer for question 5, I'm going to give you 2 books for this question. The first one is The Only Plane in the Sky, An Oral History of 9/11 by Garrett M. Graff. This one I would be hesitant to recommend it to everybody, particularly in its audiobook format, because of how it is read. The book is read by a whole cast of characters, and they do include actual recordings from the airplanes that were brought down during 9/11, and I felt a bit uncomfortable. I was getting goosebumps listening to it. So although I find this book to be incredibly powerful and something a lot of people would probably be interested in reading, I wouldn't recommend it in its audiobook form to just anyone, because yeah, it could be, it could really make some people upset. The other book that I hesitate to recommend to some people is Leave the World Behind by Rumaan Alam. This is a book where a family who's from New York City, they rent a house out on like Long Island, and when they're out there, something happens and they're not really sure what. Like, they can't get a TV signal, they still have power, but something's just off. And then the owners of the house show up and say that there's just been chaos in New York City, and they're not sure whether to believe them or not. And then you have this dynamic between these 2 families. It looks at race and class, things like that. And it seems like it might build up to some big thing, but it really doesn't. It's very much about the subtleties, the family relationships, the relationships between these 2 different families. And so you don't have a very satisfying ending with this, but if you know that going in, it can be a good read. I did like it, but I'm glad I was told that you're not going to get that really big answer that you want. So if that's something you want out of a story, I wouldn't recommend this book to you. But if you like the sound of that otherwise, this could be one you should read. Question 9 is reflect on your year as a bookish content creator. So there are a couple mini prompts within here. The first one is talking about your goals that you met. I was really happy that I finished my His Dark Materials reread. That was something that I personally had set as a goal for myself. I also wanted to participate in the BookTube prize again and film videos for the 2 different rounds that I read for. So I did do that. I was also really good about doing closed captioning on my videos again. That's something that I still get frustrated with sometimes and really don't want to do it, but I do usually make myself do it anytime it's a video that's just me. Of the 18 videos that I've uploaded so far, not including this one, I've put closed captioning on 15 of them. The 3 that I didn't were all videos that were over 20 minutes long. It really adds a lot of time to making the content, but it's important to do. So when you're, thinking about your video, filming it, editing it, getting it up, and then, you're like, oh, I still have to do closed captioning. So I've set certain parameters so I don't get too frustrated by it, but I am glad that I've stuck with it. And then the other thing was my Goodreads goal. This year, I actually did something different where I just set it to a smaller number and just increased it every time I got close to that goal. So at this point, I had set it, I got up to setting it to 35. I met that 35 goal and I just let it be. I wanted to feel like I could read whatever I wanted to read and I wouldn't feel pressured by the Goodreads goal to only read small books that I could read quickly. Because last year I didn't meet my Goodreads goal and I just hate how it doesn't show up on the side that you completed it and everything. It just made me feel so guilty. So I was like, okay, no, I'm gonna do it this way this time. And I think it worked well. One of the other mini prompts in here is good memories. I really enjoy the BookTube prize and like the excitement that surrounds it. Each time you find out what books make it, what books you're gonna be reading in your group, seeing what moves on. I find that really fun and it's cool to see what other people think of the books that they've read in their section. And then it also pushes me to read faster because there's a bit of a deadline. So I'm less inclined to scroll on my phone forever or watch a TV show or something. I'm like, okay, nope, I gotta read, gotta do this. Like I gotta have my votes in, gotta have my ranking in. So it's nice that it does push me to read. And then also I really enjoyed the Magical Readathon. G over at Book Roast, she's done this before in different versions, but the amount of planning that she does for that is amazing. I love just seeing all her ideas. And even though I don't usually end up reading all the books I need to read for the Magical Readathon, I just really enjoy the whole like planning. There's also a little mini prompt about any bad memories that you have associated with BookTube, and unfortunately, yes, I have some things to say for this one. I think this year was the first year that I've really considered, do I want to keep doing this? Because it was our 10-year anniversary this year, and that's a long time to be putting up videos on YouTube. I mean, we don't have a particular schedule where we're posting like 2 times a week or whatever. We usually try to alternate each week. Sometimes we, go 2 weeks without posting. But at a certain point, it's like, okay, I enjoy YouTube as a hobby, but at what point am I gonna say, you know what? I've had my time, I've done what I wanted to do with this, I think I'm done uploading videos. And so this year was the first year where I really considered like, what would that look like? How would I want to move forward from that? And so we're not saying leaving now or anything, but it's come up in my own mind and I've thought about it a bit. So, because this is not something I think I'm going to do forever. I enjoy watching other people's videos. I wouldn't like disappear. I would still want to comment, but I just feel like at some point I am going to want to stop uploading videos. The other bad memory that I have associated with this year kind of also influenced that thought about, how much longer do I want to keep doing this? I uploaded a video called When Authors Aren't Good People. I uploaded it at the end of 2021 because I was talking about the Alice Sebold issue and what happened with her book, Lucky. And because I had posted a review of that book way back in the day, people were commenting on it saying that I needed to make a video like following up on this, and I was like, I don't really need to make a video that's just reacting to this news, but I want to talk about authors in general. And what do you do when you really like a book by an author, but it turns out the author isn't a good person, particularly in cases where they're still alive? Do you still read their books? Like how do you deal with that? And I wanted people to comment because I didn't have a great answer for it either. So I filmed that video, uploaded it. The first 2.5 weeks or so was pretty typical views for us, like a few hundred views. It might have gotten like a few extra hundred than it normally would because it was a more controversial video, right? And we don't really do controversial videos. And so, but then right at the end of the year, it was like December 27th or something, there was one day where the views on the video doubled and I got flooded with comments. It had clearly, like, the algorithm had picked it up and had pulled in people from outside of the BookTube sphere, and people just started commenting things that were not so much related to the topic that I was trying to discuss, and people like defending J.K. Rowling and talking about Alice Sebold and like that whole situation, and the overwhelming amount of comments and the amount of negativity that was in the comments. That was probably the worst time on BookTube ever. There was a few days where it was really, really heavy and the video was getting like a couple hundred views a day. And then it started to die off, but I still, will get comments on that video, and it's just, oh God, I left the video up, I left the comments on because like, that's what happens. I uploaded the video, that's what happens on the internet, you have to deal with it. But man, did I fucking hate that like influx of comments, especially because I was home trying to enjoy Christmas with my family, and I would specifically not go onto YouTube because I didn't want to know how many new comments were on there and how many I would feel pressured to respond to. So yeah, that was a really bad time. And I never want that to happen again, so next time people pressure me into trying to upload a video talking about controversial stuff, I'm gonna say, no, I don't want to, because I'm the one who's gonna have to deal with the comments for forever and ever and ever. So you can upload something if you want to. And then the last little sub prompt in here is favorite videos that you made. My favorite videos from this year are ones that I had been thinking about for a long time, and I finally got to actually film them and make them, and I'm really happy with how they turned out. The first one was the one that I did where is BookTube made me read it, because it was celebrating 10 years on BookTube, so I chose one book for each year, books that I might not have known about or picked up if I hadn't seen everybody else talking about them. And then also my book to series videos, I did one for The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian. I also did it for Dope Sick. And although none of those videos have really any views, I am at least personally satisfied with myself for actually completing them. So that's really nice to know. Like, I'm really glad I did them, even though they have like 200 views or less. The final question is to tag some fellow bookish content creators. So, you know, Jill, I could tag you this year. I can just reverse it right back on you if you want to do this for 2022. I can also obviously tag Les and tell her to do this since she's, you know, my partner in crime. I will also tag maybe 1 or 2 other people. I'm not sure who yet though, because I just want to make sure that no one's already done this year. So if you see your handle tagged down at the bottom, please do this because I'd really like to see and hear your answers. That is it for the book postscript tag for 2022. If you have any thoughts on any of my answers to these questions, please let me know in the comments below. As always, all of our links are in the down bar. You can go check those out if you feel so inclined. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you later.